At 3:47 in the morning, the first delivery truck of the day pulls out of Buckhead Beef's Atlanta distribution facility and turns south toward Buckhead itself, the affluent northern Atlanta neighborhood whose name the company carries and whose restaurant density makes it one of the most concentrated high-end food service markets in the Southeast. The truck carries 2,340 pounds of beef on this route. The manifest lists 23 stops: fine dining restaurants, luxury hotels, private country clubs. Each stop has a specific delivery window. The kitchen, receiving hours that the chef specified when the account was set up. The window that gets protein into the walk-in cooler before the prep team arrives. Miss the window, and the delivery sits on a loading dock in Atlanta's summer heat. The beef on this truck costs more per pound than most grocery stores sell for in a week. It does not sit on loading docks. The driver knows the route without checking the manifest. He has driven it for 4 years, every stop, every loading dock access code, every chef's name. This is not commodity food distribution, where the product sells itself and the driver is interchangeable. This is relationship logistics, where the driver is part of the product. Buckhead Beef operates one of the largest high-end beef distribution networks in the southeastern United States. Headquartered in Atlanta, the company processes and moves over 1 million pounds of beef weekly through temperature-controlled facilities that receive subprimals from major processing plants nationwide, then age, further fabricate, portion, and deliver them to the restaurants, hotels, and clubs whose menus depend on consistent, specified, premium product arriving on time. 1 million pounds per week, every week. The operation that delivers that volume to white tablecloth kitchens across the Southeast begins not with the delivery truck, but with the aging room. The beef that Buckhead Beef distributes arrives at the Atlanta facility as vacuum-packed subprimals from major USDA-inspected processing plants across the country. Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef facilities producing the USDA prime and upper choice carcasses that the high-end restaurant market requires. The sourcing relationship between Buckhead Beef and its processing plant suppliers is not a commodity purchasing arrangement. It is a specification-based procurement that targets specific quality attributes. USDA prime grade, which requires abundant marbling at the 12th to 13th rib assessment. Upper choice, with marbling scores approaching prime. Breed-specific programs like Certified Angus Beef that carry quality specifications above the USDA choice floor. And the imported Wagyu and domestic Wagyu cross products whose intramuscular fat levels exceed the USDA grading scale entirely. USDA prime represents approximately 3 to 5% of all graded beef in the United States in a typical year. The national beef supply produces roughly 26 million fed cattle annually. At 3 to 5% prime, the total prime supply runs to 780,000 to 1.3 million cattle per year. A finite resource that the fine dining restaurants of every major U.S. city compete to access. Buckhead Beef's procurement relationships with major plants give it consistent access to this limited supply in the Southeast, where the restaurant density of Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, Nashville, and New Orleans generates customer demand that a spot market purchasing approach cannot reliably serve. The subprimals that arrive at Buckhead Beef's facility carry the vacuum seal and the barrier film packaging that the processing plants applied within hours of fabrication. USDA prime ribeye rolls, strip loins, tenderloins, and short loins arrive in cases stacked on refrigerated pallets. The receiving dock's first check is temperature, the cold chain that began at the processing plant 1,500 miles away must arrive intact at the Atlanta facility's dock. A receiving log records each delivery, vendor, product, USDA grade, lot number, internal temperature at receiving, and the placement location within Buckhead Beef's temperature-controlled storage. This documentation is the traceability foundation that connects each subprimal through Buckhead Beef's processing and delivery to the restaurant that receives it. The aging rooms at Buckhead Beef's Atlanta facility divide the premium beef supply into two distinct programs whose biochemistry, operational requirements, and price outcomes differ in ways that the fine dining market has increasingly understood and differentiated. All wet aging, the standard commercial aging method that the vacuum-packed subprimal performs automatically, allows the enzymatic tenderization processes within the muscle to proceed over time while the product remains sealed in its oxygen-free packaging. The proteolytic enzymes naturally present in beef muscle, primarily calpain and cathepsin, break down the myofibrillar proteins that create toughness in fresh beef at a rate determined by time and temperature. A USDA prime strip loin wet aged for 28 days at 34 degrees Fahrenheit is measurably more tender and has developed more complex flavor compounds than the same cut at 7 days. Buckhead Beef's wet aging program assigns specific subprimals to designated aging inventory that the company holds for defined periods before the cutting room fabricates them to customer order. A restaurant customer who orders 28-day wet-aged prime strip loin receives product that entered Buckhead Beef's aging inventory 28 days before their delivery date, which means the ordering, receiving, and inventory management systems must track aging time by the day across the full inventory of subprimals flowing through the facility. At 1 million pounds per week of total distribution volume, even a fraction of that in the wet aging program represents significant inventory carrying cost and storage space. Pounds of product that have been purchased are consuming refrigerated storage and are generating no revenue until their aging period completes and they move to the cutting room. The dry aging program at Buckhead Beef operates on different physics and produces different results. Dry aging requires removing the vacuum packaging and exposing the subprimal, typically a bone-in rib section, a short loin, or a strip loin, to temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled air circulating conditions in a dedicated dry aging room. The controlled airflow draws moisture from the beef's surface, concentrating flavors as water weight reduces and allowing the surface to form a dry crust, the pellicle, that protects the interior from contamination while enzymatic tenderization proceeds. The dry aging room at Buckhead Beef maintains temperature between 34 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit, relative humidity between 75 and 85%, and airflow velocity from dedicated circulation fans that prevents the temperature stratification that would create differential aging rates at different positions in the room. Each of these parameters requires continuous monitoring. A humidity spike above 85% encourages mold growth that can penetrate beyond the surface crust into the saleable meat. A temperature drop below 34 degrees slows enzymatic activity and extends the aging timeline beyond the customer's order specification. A 21-day dry-aged bone-in ribeye section loses 15 to 25% of its initial weight to moisture evaporation and surface trim during the aging period. A 45-day dry-aged strip loin may lose 30 to 35%. That weight loss, the shrinkage that converts purchase weight into saleable yield, is the primary reason dry-aged beef commands the price premium that Buckhead Beef's restaurant customers pay. Yet the yield the customer receives in cut steaks represents a fraction of the subprimal weight that entered the aging room weeks earlier. At 45-day dry age with 30% shrinkage, a 14-pound strip loin that cost Buckhead Beef $18 per pound at receiving, $252 total, yields approximately 9.8 pounds of saleable trimmed product. Recovered cost per pound of dry-aged product, $25.71 before cutting room labor, overhead, and delivery margin. Oh, the restaurant that puts a 45-day dry-aged New York strip on its menu at $85 is paying for the compounded cost of time, weight loss, controlled environment infrastructure, and the procurement relationship that sourced prime product in the first place. The cutting room at Buckhead Beef's Atlanta facility operates as a custom fabrication operation whose output differs from any two customers' orders on any given day. The restaurant account that orders 24 8-ounce filet mignon portions for Saturday service specifies a weight tolerance plus or minus half an ounce, and a trimming specification: silver skin removed, chain removed, tail tied, or untied. The hotel account that orders bone-in ribeyes specifies a specific bone length, a specific weight range of 22 to 24 ounces, and a fat cap thickness left on at service. Now, the country club that orders whole tenderloins for their kitchen to break down in-house specifies the PSMO, peeled, side muscle on, form that removes the exterior fat and silver skin while leaving the side muscle attached. These specifications arrive as orders in Buckhead Beef's order management system each day. Orders called in by the chef or the purchasing manager, sometimes the night before delivery, sometimes the same morning, but with the delivery truck's departure time creating the deadline that the cutting room must work backward from. The cutters in Buckhead Beef's fabrication room work with a precision that commodity meat cutting does not require. A production line producing 10-ounce boneless strip steaks for a supermarket tolerates plus or minus an ounce on each piece. The consumer adjusts. A white tablecloth restaurant serving a 10-ounce strip at $75 cannot absorb an 8.5-ounce delivery that makes the plate look skimpy against the menu's promise. The cutter's skill, the eye and hand calibration that places the knife at exactly the position that yields the specified weight, is the craft component of a supply chain that is otherwise measured in tons and temperatures. The portion scale at each cutting station generates a record of each cut piece, weight, order number, or destination account. The portion records accumulate into the day's production log that quality control reviews before packing begins. A piece that falls outside the tolerance window goes back to the cutter for trim adjustment, or becomes a different product form. Trim that feeds the ground beef or stew beef program rather than the portion cut order, or packing the finished cuts into the cases that the delivery trucks will carry, follows a customer-specific labeling protocol Each case or tray carries the restaurant's name, the cut specification, the weight, the USDA grade, the Buckhead Beef lot number, and the aging program designation where applicable. The label on a case of 45-day dry-aged USDA prime New York strips heading to a downtown Atlanta steakhouse contains every piece of information that chef needs to verify on receiving and that Buckhead Beef's traceability system needs to execute a targeted recall if a food safety issue ever requires it. The temperature-controlled logistics network that Buckhead Beef operates to deliver 1 million pounds per week across the Southeast is where the precision of the cutting room either reaches the customer intact or fails at the last mile. The refrigerated delivery fleet operates on daily routes that cover Atlanta's restaurant districts and extend to regional markets: Charlotte, Nashville, Birmingham, Jacksonville, where Buckhead Beef's customer accounts require the same daily delivery reliability that Atlanta restaurants receive. Each truck carries an electronic temperature logger that creates a continuous record of compartment temperature through the route from departure to last stop. The restaurant receiving manager who checks incoming beef against that temperature log is performing the cold chain verification that food safety and product quality both require. A route sequencing on Buckhead Beef's daily delivery schedule balances geographic efficiency against product temperature risk. A delivery route that carries dry-aged strip loins alongside fresh tenderloins and butter-aged ground beef operates one refrigerated compartment for the full load. The ambient temperature outside the truck, Atlanta in July at 94 degrees Fahrenheit, does not penetrate the refrigerated compartment if the equipment is functioning. When the door opens at each stop, ambient air enters. The cumulative door open time across 23 stops on a route determines how much thermal load the refrigeration system must manage to maintain the compartment temperature within specification through the last delivery. A Buckhead Beef's fleet maintenance protocols address this by targeting compartment temperature at 34 degrees at departure, cold enough to absorb the door-open thermal load across a full route without allowing product temperature to rise above 40 degrees at the final stop. A truck that departs at 38 degrees on a July Atlanta morning may exceed 40 degrees at stop 19 if the refrigeration unit is running below optimal performance. The driver who has run this route for 4 years knows which stops have long receiving processes. The hotel loading dock, where the receiving clerk takes 12 minutes per delivery regardless of order size, and adjusts his stop sequence to put time-sensitive temperature-critical items early in the route, accepting the geographic inefficiency in exchange for the quality insurance. The customer relationships that Buckhead Beef maintains with the high-end restaurants, hotels, and country clubs across the Southeast represent the commercial infrastructure that 1 million weekly pounds flows through. A fine dining restaurant's executive chef who specifies USDA prime dry-aged beef on a menu is making a promise to every guest who orders it. The promise is a specific flavor and texture experience. The concentrated, nutty, minerally complexity that extended dry aging produces, the butter softness of prime marbling rendered by kitchen heat. If Buckhead Beef's delivery on Tuesday morning delivers product that doesn't match the specification the chef built the menu around, the chef doesn't simply return it. The dinner service that starts at 6 p.m. doesn't move. The chef improvises, the experience suffers, the relationship strains. Buckhead Beef's sales and account management team maintains the customer relationships that translate into order specifications, delivery schedule agreements, and the ongoing adjustments that active restaurant accounts require. A new menu that changes the cut or weight specification. A private event that requires 200 portions of beef tenderloin on a date 3 weeks out. Product that must enter the wet aging program today to be ready on the event date. A chef who is switching from USDA Prime to Wagyu for the ribeye program and needs a quality comparison before committing the menu. These are not transactions. They are operational partnerships that the restaurant industry's demand for consistency requires, and that Buckhead Beef's business model is built to provide. The distribution margin that Buckhead Beef earns on 1 million pounds per week exists because the service layer, the aging programs, the custom portioning, the daily delivery, the account relationship converts commodity subprimals from processing plants into the specific products and delivery reliability that high-end food service customers cannot build themselves. A Michelin-starred Atlanta restaurant does not have the space for a dry aging room. The procurement relationships to source USDA prime subprimals at volume, the cutting room capacity to portion 200 covers of beef to specification, or the cold chain logistics to receive product from a Kansas processing plant on the same day it needs to be on the plate. Buckhead Beef provides all of it daily in a single delivery, 1 million pounds per week. The number looks different from inside the operation than it does from outside. From outside, it is a volume statistic, a measure of scale that places Buckhead Beef among the significant regional food service distributors in the Southeast. From inside, it is the accumulation of 23 stop delivery routes departing before 4 a.m., aging rooms where subprimals hang for 45 days, losing 30% of their weight to produce a flavor that a restaurant will charge $85 for. Cutting room tables where a cutter's knife placement determines whether a $75 restaurant entree is 8 ounces or 8.5, and the refrigerated compartment temperature at stop 19 of a July Atlanta route. And a food itself is the performance, and where food itself is the performance, and where the beef on the plate represents the most visible, most evaluated, most discussed component of what a guest pays $100 or more to consume. The supply chain that makes that experience possible is not visible from the dining room. The aging room, the cutting room, the 3:47 a.m. departure, the temperature log on the delivery truck, none of this exists in the guest's awareness. It exists in the steak. The driver makes the last stop on the Atlanta route at 7:23 a.m. The receiving kitchen is open. The chef is already in. The case of dry-aged prime strip loins goes into the walk-in at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, exactly as it left the Buckhead Beef facility 3 hours and 43 minutes ago. Tonight's service starts at 6 p.m. The steaks are ready. If this detailed look at the USDA prime sourcing, wet and dry aging programs, custom portioning operations, cold chain delivery logistics, and restaurant relationship management behind Buckhead Beef's 1 million pound weekly distribution gave you a clearer picture of what actually sits between a processing plant in Kansas and a steakhouse plate in Atlanta, hit the like button and help the algorithm reach more viewers who want this level of supply chain detail. Subscribe for more deep dives into the distribution systems and specialized operations that serve the food industry's most demanding customers. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And if you've eaten at a restaurant that gets its beef from an operation like this one, let us know in the comments.